I just finished my session at the Ark. As the audience unloads, let me share what I'm doing after every single session. I'm getting the speakers to give me the elevator speech of the compelling arguments they've made to this wonderful group. What is it that's going to allow us to tell a different story, to change the social fabric, to have freedom, but with the responsibility and the knowledge to do good with that freedom? That was me explaining the importance of the Ark Forum, crafting a better story. We shared that in the first video of this 5-part series. Now for part 2, we're going to continue with the metaphor of the tree to help explain the teachings of this meeting. Now, if the roots are all about a better story, giving rise to everything else, then the trunk of the tree is the resulting powerful social fabric, which many associate with freedom. But be careful here, because it's not the freedom to do whatever you desire. It's the freedom to take responsibility so that we seek the truth. Go out there looking for it, and then we do good with that wisdom. In fact, the opposite of slavery is responsibility more than freedom. Think about that. Plus, of course, personal responsibility, it improves our mental health. Now, the wisdom is beautifully explained by Bishop Barron, right? Wonderful Catholic theologian. He really hit it. And then Amy Orr attacks the dangers of cancel culture. John Anderson comes on and reminds us that we all already sacrifice our freedom for our kids, and we do it willingly and with love. And Dynasty's Willie Robertson reminds us that many are left behind, and they desire dignity, and they deserve it too. I watched the audience in raptured joy of hearing you speak about some of the deep values that are grounded in Judeo-Christian tradition that you argue are part of the disruption, especially of the youth of the world.
Yeah.
Not just in the U.S. You just came from Rome. You've been talking to folks from everywhere.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, well, I talked today about 2 types of freedom. So there's a type of freedom which is dominant, I think, in the West, which is self-determination and choice. So I determine what things are, even to the point of determining reality and my own identity. Then there's a type of freedom which is a kind of surrender to objective value, whereby I become a free speaker of English, or I become a free swinger of the golf club, or a free moral agent. And in those cases, I'm not creating reality. I'm aligning my will to objective value, and thereby becoming free to attain those values and to embody them. And that second one I call freedom for excellence. And that's what the classical tradition talks about, the Bible and the great, moral teachers. What happened with modernity is we shifted to this other view of freedom. And I think today it's running amok. I think especially young people think, I need to invent my whole reality. Well, that leaves you in a very empty space, morally speaking. The idea is to train people to know what the objective values are and how to surrender to them. That's really what my talk was about.
You went quite deeply into the basic argument about whether God can sin.
Yeah.
It's actually important because, as you point out, we try to copy God. We seek to
Right.
emulate. And at our best times, we try to do what God would do or what Jesus would do.
It's a very interesting thing, because it's Aquinas who said God can't sin. And we might say, well, what do you mean he can't sin? If he's God and he's free, maybe he won't sin, but he certainly can't he? And Thomas Aquinas says, no, because God's will is always aligned to his own goodness and perfection. So he never deviates from that. God is always true to himself. God can't sin. And so you're quite right. We're meant to imitate God. We're most free when we can't sin. When we're so attuned to the good, it becomes second nature to us. And that's the goal of all moral education. And I think young people especially are missing out on that. And it's causing a lot of sadness.
The metaphor you used to drive us home for me was the learning of the English language.
Yeah.
Just help everyone appreciate why that is analogous in a way that they might resonate to, and understand why freedom comes with responsibility and comes with seeking truth.
You and I are free speakers of English. We can say pretty much anything we want to say. I can freely express myself. Now, why? Not because when I was a kid, someone said, yeah, talk any way you want. That I was never corrected. No, I internalized the values of English. The syntax, the grammar, the vocabulary. I listened to great speakers of English. I was corrected time and time again by my parents and teachers. They say, no, don't say it that way. Having internalized all that objective value, now you and I are able to speak English very freely. That's the analogy with the moral life. It's not that I'm creating value, I'm internalizing value. I'm making the moral law so deep in me. And that's, I quoted St. Paul, it's no longer I who live. That's the old self. That's the old me. It's Christ who lives in me. But see, Paul isn't for a second less Paul because of that. It's not like he's lost himself. No, he's found himself. But it's no longer that old self that lives. It's Christ who lives in me. Now I'm free.
For many who are struggling with a perception of freedom, and
Yeah.
it doesn't come with any strings attached.
Right.
Balance or juggle freedom, responsibility, and a search for the truth, search for good.
Well, look at that word itself is interesting, isn't it? Responsibility. It's the ability to respond. So I'm not creating value, I'm responding to value. So a value appears to me or is taught to me. Like when I was a kid, someone showed me baseball and I just loved it. I fell in love with the game of baseball. And then I said, I want to play. I want to internalize those rhythms and dynamics and those laws. So I became a responsible baseball player. And I realized, oh no, don't swing that way. No, that's not how you field the ball. You got to get in front of the ball. You can't. I was internalizing the rules. I was responsible to those values. That's how it works.
So let me give you the essence of what I've just been talking about, which is in our cultural context of cancel culture, with the whole idea of the victim status being highest and their rage and anger in our cultural moment, the idea of forgiveness and redemption is being lost. So people have to die a death if they transgress in some way. They're utterly cancelled. And so I'm trying to argue that the Christian faith uniquely offers something in our cultural moment in saying redemption is possible. Redemption that doesn't undermine the seriousness of harm, because it both upholds the image of God in us, the value of human life, but also says that harm will ultimately be judged by loving God. So in the person of Christ, you have this sacrifice, this kind of payment for the transgression of the world and the possibility then of forgiveness. And in our cultural moment where that is being lost, this is a legacy aspect of the Christian faith that I think does have something really meaningful to offer, because, you know, all our literature points towards this narrative of desiring and needing redemption. And if we lose the possibility of redemption, we're a society without hope.
We need to rediscover the importance of history. We live in an age when the only absolutes, it seems, are the mathematical or the scientific ones that you can't avoid, and even those now seem to be challenged. But when it comes to teaching history, because we've abandoned the idea of objectivity and of truth and of reason, because we have, when history's taught, if it's taught, when it's taught, it's often revisionist history designed to create or further an agenda of the modern age. In reality, properly taught, history means we can bring the wisdom of the ages to today's table and short circuit a lot of the agonies involved in having to learn for ourselves what people before us have learnt over the centuries.
Is there anything you didn't get to with all the discussions around power and freedom and values that you didn't get to?
I think it would have been useful if we'd just been able to explore a little more about the way in which, when we have children, we learn that we have to make way for other people. And in so doing, see something of the need to put self-interest and self-absorption aside in order to focus on others, particularly if they happen to be our own. I think it's one of the missing ingredients in an age when so few people are focused on having children. So many people don't have children, that it encourages a view that you can be an island. You can't be an island. When you have children, you really do realise you can't be an island, and it causes you to remember that someone made way for you when you were born.
Well, I think for me, the big concern is that we are transitioning to all these, alternative technologies that are actually doing all the things that our legacy technologies do, but worse. They're more diffuse, they produce less power, they're more expensive, and they use so many more minerals, particularly the critical minerals and the rare earths, which we have a total logistical supply dependency upon China on. Now, regardless of the geostrategic implications of that, you never want to have one lender, one broker as being all of your business. It doesn't have to go to a hot war conflict. If there are any dramas over there, that means dramas for us. So our priority for securing human flourishing has to be energy security. We have our own. between the US, between Australia, between all of our friends and our allies all around the world, in partnership with each other, we can actually solve some of these challenges. But what we have done is we have completely offset all of our critical thinking to others who are playing grand strategy, playing the long 20, 30-year game. And it's about time the adults came back to the table and started thinking, what are the kind of outcomes that we want to be producing for our citizens, and making those decisions today for our citizens.
Well stated.
We're talking about kind of the left behind group in America. So that big group of people that tend to get overlooked, and we feel like we're, I guess, good representatives of that, being from Louisiana, right in the heart of the country. So I think a lot of the heartland, red America that just seems to get overlooked.
Why do you think their story, your story, is not being heard?
Well, that's what we're going to discuss. There's a lot of reasons. I think we get overlooked. I think we get marginalized and really disrespected. So we're talking about the dignity, bringing back the dignity to people, and our voices are heard. And I think we see that playing out all the time. And politically and governments, and there seems to be an arrogance, I guess, media. Corporations, there's a lot of that, and so really overlooked.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you this afternoon.
Awesome. Good to talk to you.